Unfazed by tear gas, stun grenades and water cannon, rioters stormed the mayor's office in Kazakhstan's commercial capital. Smoke and flames can be seen coming out of the building. According to news reports, protesters also set fire to the presidential residence in the city. The resignation of the government on Tuesday failed to quell the anger, and violence has escalated. Blaming the unrest on organised groups and thugs, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev vowed a tough response. The televised address came after Tokayev took over as head of the powerful State Security Council from Nursultan Nazarbayev, Kazakhstan's longtime ruler who retained wide authority after stepping down as president in 2019. Some protesters have been chanting slogans against the 81-year-old who had ruled the former Soviet Republic for almost 3 decades. Some tried to pull down a statue of Nazarbayev.
There was an uproar in France's parliament as Emmanuel Macron's comments and strong language about unvaccinated people became public. Some opposition MPs booed the health minister, while others described the French president's words as vulgar, before a debate on the government's proposed vaccine pass was abruptly suspended. In the Parisian newspaper, Macron said that unvaccinated people were irresponsible. As for the unvaccinated, I really want to piss them off, he said. We have to tell them, you will no longer be able to go to the restaurant. You will no longer be able to go for coffee. You will no longer be able to go to the theatre. You will no longer be able to go to the cinema.
Lawyers for the British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell are calling for a retrial following revelations about one of the jurors. Maxwell was convicted last week of sex trafficking and other charges for recruiting and grooming young girls for the late financier Jeffrey Epstein to abuse. One of the jurors on her case has since told media outlets that he was sexually abused as a child. The juror, who asked to be identified as Scotty David, told Reuters that during deliberations he shared his experiences after some of the jurors expressed scepticism about the accounts of 2 of Maxwell's accusers. In a letter to a US district judge, Maxwell's lawyer, Christian Everdell, said there were, quote, incontrovertible grounds for Maxwell to get a new trial.
The world #1 tennis player Novak Djokovic has been denied entry to Australia less than 2 weeks before the start of the Australian Open tennis tournament. Djokovic had his visa revoked after being held at Melbourne airport for several hours. Before he left for Australia, he said he'd been granted a medical exemption to take part in the Grand Slam without being vaccinated against COVID-19. Djokovic says he will file a court injunction to stop his deportation. A short while ago, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison had this to say about the tennis star.
On the issue of Mr Djokovic, rules are rules. And there are no special cases. Entry with a visa requires double vaccination or a medical exemption.
Tonight in this Philadelphia neighborhood, families and firefighters searching for answers. The horrifying scene unfolding just after 6:30 this morning. Firefighters knocking down the flames in less than an hour, but it was already too late. At least 12 people killed, 8 of them children. The 2-unit row home is owned by the Philadelphia Housing Authority. Fire officials say as many as 26 people were inside, 18 in the upper unit, and none of the building's smoke detectors were working.
At least 6 people died and 20 others fell ill after a gas leak at a chemical factory in Surat early on Thursday. The tragic incident occurred at a company in the Sachin Gujarat Industrial Development Corporation area. Reports say the labourers were sleeping when the gas leaked from a tanker which was parked outside such an industrial area. The workers died after getting suffocated due to the toxic fumes. Those who had fallen sick were admitted at the Surat Civil Hospital.
It's the world's biggest exporter of thermal coal. But Indonesia kicked off the year by announcing it was stopping supplies to overseas. The aim is to protect its own dwindling coal stockpile. Indonesia exported some 400 million tonnes in 2020. It was the biggest overseas supplier to China's powerhouse economy. Now, 80% of the coal that Indonesia exported last year went to just 5 countries. China actually accounted for almost half of it. India, the Philippines, Malaysia, South Korea made up the rest. But now, Indonesia's president, Joko Widodo, says coal mines as well as liquefied natural gas producers need to prioritise domestic supply and ensure that energy security at home is in place before exporting.
It is the end of an ordeal for the 97 hostages reaching Gusau, the capital of Zamfara state in Nigeria. On Tuesday, the police announced men, women and children abducted more than 2 months ago had recovered their freedom. They had been taken from their homes and along highways in remote communities in Zamfara and neighboring Sokoto state. Among the former captives were 19 babies and more than a dozen children.